Here is Paula Macaggi, and this is episode 23 of my show. Welcome to OFFBounds. All right, I continue here in Montreal, Canada. I have today a special guest. He's the CIO of Aldo, one of the most popular shoe brands worldwide. I'm a customer for 10 years already. Matthieu Houle, correct me your name, please.
Yeah, it's okay. Matthieu. Matthieu Houle in French, so it's very difficult to pronounce. So Matt or Matthieu or Matthew is fine.
Matt, I'll call you Matt then.
Perfect.
Welcome to OFFBounds.
It's a pleasure. Pleasure to be here with you.
So in my stay in Montreal these last 3 days, I did 4 things. I ate bagels, I ate poutines, I went to McGill University at the Benza doing retail school management, and I went at Aldo and bought some shoes. So I did all the Montrealer things that I'm supposed to do.
Check.
Check. But well, let's focus on you and what you do. But before, I want to get to how you got there, because what I heard about you is that you started a surf magazine in Costa Rica a few years ago, and now you lead technology for one of the most relevant brands. Yeah. How did that happen?
Not quite sure, but I could tell you how it happened. So basically, I used to be very good at school and stuff, so I found my way into physics. And at that time, AI was not super, so there was not a lot to do after physics. So I decided to drop out. And I went with my girlfriend at the time. We decided to go to Costa Rica. And we went there by land. And there we lived on the beach for a while. So we were, I think, 18, 19 kind of things. And then we met a French photographer that was tired of Paris, and he said, why don't we start a postcard business? And so one thing led to the other. We ended up starting a surf magazine. I learned to do graphic design, so it was the early days of Photoshop and all this.
You're putting your creativity to work.
Yes, curiosity a lot too, and more the grit to make things happen. I was selling and booming and all this stuff at the same time. So the startup, and not really technical startup, but it was a startup. So I was there for 6 years. I think when I look at it from how that period of time serves me today, I think what I learned is to say yes to every opportunity and not being afraid to fail, because you have to do it to eat. Converse asked us, can you organize a big event for a skateboard? I said, okay. Yeah. We didn't have a clue how to do it. But then it ended up being like 3,000 people. We built the biggest half pipe. We flew in some pros from California, and it was good. So I think what you learn is, say yes and take the chance, and you're going to survive. And I think that's lacking a bit today, where everything is very proper and one kind of channel. So that was the chance I got. Then we weren't making any money. So decided to come back to Montreal at the time, 2000. And I started working at the Yellow Pages as a graphic designer.
The Yellow Pages that we all know, it was the only thing in all countries, right?
Yeah,
the one thing that you look for everything.
The big book with all of these listings.
The old Google.
Yeah, the ancestor. And so I was there for a few years until they realized basically that Yellow Pages was not going to be the future. So when Steve Jobs stood up on stage and said, here's an iPhone, and then there was the App Store. So Yellow Pages Canada said, okay, we need to invest in digital. And they brought in a bunch of digital people and startup people. And they said, Matt, you're creative. The future is mobile. So here's a bit of money, go meet an agency, a small shop here in Montreal, and launch an open API, so to expose the data that we had. And we built some apps. And so all of a sudden it became, so it was prior to Google Maps, so restaurants around you and all this.
Yeah.
And we were winning prizes like best app on the App Store and all this.
That's where you got passionate about the digital side of things?
Yes, that's really that was my school of digital, which was, I learned graphic design sitting next to the graphic designer that was doing the magazine. I don't code, but I learned sitting next to that great startup at the time that was providing the services. And you figure out that I get it. enough that I can create value out of it. So we ended up with it was big, and we had a couple of $100 million of revenue after a couple of years. And then so they said, "Hey, Matthieu, why don't you take the website?" And that's the same about Converse skateboard. Is, "Hey, Matthieu, you'd be good at this." And I was kind of, "Oh, you sure? I never
and that's
did."
Really well. But that's where you got the yeses that you learned, right?
I said,
why
try.
not?
And worst case, I'll find something else. But at the end, I had about 200 people in my team, so we were building mobile applications, web applications, and all this. And then in 2018, they decided that it was the time to cut investment from a strategy perspective. So I said, okay, it's time for me to go. Aldo was looking for a digital tech guy, so they were trying to do the agile transformation, all these things. I said, sure, that one I can do. I met David, who's the CEO now, the son of the founder. I met Mr. B, we called him, so Aldo Ben Sadun, and the team. And I said, I think that's going to be a great fit for me. I think I can help, and I think I can learn. So I joined.
And you picked an industry that is so challenging. That is my industry. I love it.
What I want in my job is, I wouldn't be good at running something that's very stable. I'm good when it's a bit free-for-all. I'm good when you need to transform. So the example of Yellow Pages before the web and all this, they didn't need to transform. We're saying, hey, Google's coming. I like retail because it's in full transformation, even more so today with the post-COVID and the way that consumers are shopping.
And the
so
changes
I love it.
That you blink and there's another change that you have.
Yeah, and that's really an environment I like. I also like that it's a private company, so it's a lot easier to make changes. So you
don't have to. You can do some changes thinking in 10 years and not necessarily in the next quarter what you're gonna give to the shareholders, right?
Exactly. So that's a real challenge when you're trying to transform. For us, it's just I always tell my team, imagine yourself at the Ben Sadun family dinner, and asking, okay, I need that amount of money to do this, and why should I invest? So it brings a lot of proximity to the changes and the investment we need to make, the results we need to deliver.
The company Aldo was born in the 70s, so it's almost more than 50 years old. I imagine there was a lot of legacy technology within the company before you joined for this transformation. How is the company's view and perspective and culture on innovation and technology advancements?
So my point of view is there's probably always legacy code and application in any company, and probably even startups, after 2 years, the first stuff we built, it's legacy. So one thing that Aldo did early is recognize, and that's a lot on David, he recognizes that technology can be a weapon to compete, an advantage to compete. So they've invested, for example, early days before COVID and all this, they said, okay, Omnichannel is super important because it helps us differentiate. We're the first to be able to offer these COVID type of use cases like curbside pickup, and if we don't have your size in our store, we can ship it from e-com. So today it's kind of but
nowadays it's of course everybody offers
if you don't do that, you're gone. But back in those days, it was very early, and still today people go, I remember when Aldo would ship my store, that was great. So they were good at understanding where to invest in technology so that it provides a competitive advantage. Now the pure front end part, I don't think is where you need to invest. So what we had built back in those days, I wouldn't say it's legacy, but we're asking ourselves, is it becoming legacy? Because that's the front end of e-commerce is not where you compete, I believe.
You are in the composable approach where you could change the front end without changing the back end.
So one thing that was done back in those days was also to say, we want to have flexibility in the front end. So all of the front end layer, experience layer is built internally on top of one of the platforms. Ours is SAP Commerce, but we made it headless before they offered it headless. So because we wanted to have the flexibility to.
You need the flexibility, agility.
Yeah.
And if you need to change anything, it's requested from retailers nowadays, it's expected from retailers nowadays to switch super quick, you have to have.
You have to. If not, you're not going to be able to compete. So any retailer, for example, during COVID that had to do a 6 months project to do the ship from store and all these omnichannel use cases, they probably suffered a lot from it because if you didn't offer it, like consumers would go to the next store.
And like, just to give a perspective on how big Aldo is with the audience. I know, but many people, I think I didn't know how many stores were involved. So you were present in more than 100 countries, more than 1,500 stores. There's the franchise model, right? The manufacturer model, where you sell to other brands. You manufacture the shoes and sell to other brands. And you also sell it on Amazon.
You have to.
Yeah, give me an idea, because I think you have so many scopes to operate.
Yeah, so I would say my personal opinion is we're a brand first retailer. So our key skill is to design shoes, recognize the trends, and to market them. So we do design and we manufacture with partners all over the world, a lot of it in Asia, obviously. So that's a core skill set. But then that skill set we gave to other brands to say, because it's an art, with a science to do shoes.
We know shoes. Shoes is our stuff. Like.
So we do it for Ted Baker, for example, Roxy. Just recently, we've announced a partnership for Sperry, Brooks Brothers, so all that. So we do come up with the collections and design and the manufacturing. Then once you have the shoes, you have to sell them. So on the channel side, we basically own and operate North America. So that's our stack, that's our web front end and store and all this stuff, marketing. The rest of the world is through franchisees, and they manage their own stack, which has some benefits, but has some challenges. Then we have wholesale. So for example, I'm going to use Nordstrom because it's a known one. So we do sell on Nordstrom, drop shipping. Some of them are conventional kind of wholesale deals. And we obviously, in that bucket, there's Amazon. That's basically somewhere you have to be.
So you give your customers the ability to find you anywhere, which is how it should be.
Yeah, I think there are 2 points, and we're spending a lot of time. There's transformation in retail. So there's the transaction point, where obviously you go into stores and you buy. But we look at it also in terms of eyeballs. So where are people going to see us? And so with the new generation, they go less to stores, but they still go to malls to do, I know that beauty, for example, is definitely an in-person experience. So how can you be there? Maybe with a store, maybe a smaller store or a pop-up store, so that we can capture the eyeballs. That's a new thing. And then I have a 15-year-old daughter, so I have my own little lab. So she goes to the beauty store to buy her stuff, or she goes to the movies because it's still a big thing for them. She sees the shoe maybe or the clothing, but she doesn't go there to transact.
But you have you can't ignore, it's
you
there.
Got the awareness part of the funnel, so the eyeballs and the knowledge.
Which is one thing that you can get if you're purely on e-commerce, right?
If you're only on e-commerce, it's a lot more difficult, and it's getting a lot more difficult and expensive, because then your option is, the two basically giants.
Give all your money to Meta and Google.
Exactly. So, but then once you have the eyeballs, and I'm going to use my daughter as the persona, when she says, I want that bag or those shoes, where does she transact? In our mind, it's, she's going to go to the Aldo website. But 60%, I think, of product search, and she's going to go to Amazon, because that's where they do product searches. And so you want to make sure that you're there, more on the transaction ability. And now you have Meta and TikTok, all these people starting to do transaction on the application. A bit like you have in China. In China, you don't really do e-commerce or own and operated e-commerce. Like, you do this more of a publicity stunt.
It's a channel, so you're going to reach
But 99% of transactions are done through the main apps that Chinese people use. So I think some of it is going to come, especially with the challenge on data privacy, and so probably advertising.
Which in China is a lot easier to because there isn't such a thing.
So I think TikTok's or these big companies are going to try to find different ways to monetize the audience, and transactional is definitely part of it.
Yeah. So you are present. You have to be present.
You have to be
everywhere.
present, and therefore me as the tech guy, I need to make sure that we have a platform that can easily integrate. And it's not always the case right now. And so we spend a lot of time though to say, okay, if we connect to all these new experiences, it needs to be quick. How are we going to manage the inventory? So can you also do drop shipping and all of that? So, but we think a lot about this in terms of what we must do. Like that laws on data privacy and all that nice stuff and cybersecurity. But there's also...
I heard that. So hard.
Yeah. I like to create business value. This one is protecting business value, but it's necessary. And I think the team does a great job at it, but it's not as exciting as opening new channels of revenue.
And how do you do to manage? I think that's a challenge for every brand and retailer, how to manage the inventory, what you're going to have, like how many pieces you should produce. Is that part of your job as well?
So I define my job as a CIO in 3 words, and that's in IT what we do. So we believe that what's going to make Aldo successful is the people and their human qualities. So it's their creativity, judgment, critical thinking, empathy, like in the stores and all this. So my job as a CIO and as an IT team is 3 things. One is to protect them. So cybersecurity, if we get hacked, the shoe product designer is not going to be able to product design. So it's an obvious one. The stores are going to be closed and all that mayhem. The second one, I call it electricity. You know, all this stuff just needs to work.
Yeah, like the ground, like
yeah,
without the basics,
the Wi-Fi,
connectivity,
exactly, but also the application. So if the application is buggy or the reports are not issued on Sunday morning, that's electricity part. But the third one is, I call it superpowers. So that's the third part of what we do, is provide superpowers to the product designers, people in store. At least we aim to deliver superpowers so that they could have more time to focus on their human qualities. So if the shoe designer is spending 80% of her time right now crunching Excel, and she's good at probably more Photoshop versus Excel, if you will, to simplify things.
Why am I thinking about AI here?
Yeah, that's exactly where AI comes into play. So we're looking a lot, doing a lot into the AI field, the broad one. So Gen AI, machine learning. I think it's the combination of both that's powerful. So yeah. So for inventory, so imagine tomorrow you'd have a crystal ball that you can predict sales with a certain level of accuracy. I think that's a good example of a competitive advantage from technology. So we set out to do a project to do this. So first I hired someone on the team that's, he's a professor at the McGill School, also holds a PhD. He's done it in the past.
Make sure that we love McGill School.
Yeah. And we do a lot of work with them. But then we went to get some funding. So there's a great program in Montreal or in Canada actually, AI. So it's basically to do this, to use AI to improve supply chain. So we got the funds, and then we needed partners, and Montreal is a great ecosystem for AI. So we work with Ivado Labs, which is basically a delivery arm to create these kind of projects to put the science into businesses. In
the forecasting side or the order management side? The
core of it is we called our app Delphin. It's still an internal name, but that's okay. Sure. Now it's public. Like the Oracle of Delphi. So once you can predict the future, there's a lot of secondary use cases you can do. So you could obviously have the right shoe in the right store, but you could improve on the markdown, so when to change the pricing or launch promotion. So we ship from stores, so which store? So you could say, okay, the closest one, but no, I could sell in the one that I see is not going to sell. So we really are focused on the demand and sales forecast, because with that, we could do a lot.
So you do have the ship from store. Is the store the main fulfillment center for the orders?
We ship 99%, and I always keep 1% just to make sure that We ship mostly from stores, and that's another example where I think Aldo was kind of innovating a bit. So it gives you, obviously, it's the same inventory, so it's easier to manage, less transport. It gives you also, in the stores, you could leverage people that are there to do the shipping, makes it easier to return and all this stuff. So we ship from stores, but it comes with some challenges. One of them being, okay, which store to ship from, and if I ship too much from that store, they're going to run out and
then they're not going to serve the
sell.
customers that are in person. Yeah.
So a good example, if I know that model of shoe and that size is not moving in this store, even if this other one is closer, so the basic algorithm would say ship from the one that's closer. This one's a bit farther, but it's not moving, so let's use from that one.
So you optimize the inventory for each store.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's one application of forecasting. So if you will, the Delphin, she's got three main things. One is on the product side, so you could predict on the lady shoes, and then you want to go to the SKU. The other one is on the timeline part. So are you predicting for tomorrow and next week, like the use case we just spoke about? Or are you trying to predict really the future, like in 6 months? And the third one is geography. So obviously Miami.
If you're present in 100 plus countries, you have to know the weather for each of them, right?
So we do it only for North America now.
Okay.
And it's part of the challenges of the models we have. The model we have with franchisees, we don't have the consumer data, transactional data on all this. But Miami and Montreal are, very different. And so one big advantage of the machine learning algorithm is it can crunch a lot more data a lot quicker. So it can use the weather from that. It can use special events. Maybe, I don't know, there's a football or a show or whatever. It can use consumer sentiment data from different regions. And it could do that all the time. Like, it doesn't need time off and things like that.
So the data comes digested to the superhuman. Like, you got the superpowers, so the superhuman is going to take this data and make the analysis.
The way you plan sales and buying is people around the table. They bring their data, but there is stats and data part, but there's an art part to it. What's going to become trendy? We don't have data to figure this out. That's the human kind of side of things. But so the way we see it is we see Delphin. Let's say we're planners. I would see Delphin sitting right there and crunching the data. Hey, do you have data on this and this and that? And if we do this, what's going to happen? I really see like some kind of a humanoid sitting right next to us, not like replacing what we do, but just being very good in maths, and
that comes your physics background.
Yeah.
But what gets me interested too is, I think if you're Aldo, you have this brand to honor, right? And you have all these franchises that you don't have the access of the data, which seems to be the challenge. But I assume if I'm having this experience in a store in Canada and I want to have the same experience in a store in France, for example, how do you communicate with the franchisees? What would be the best strategy for that specific reason?
So the model, the 1.0 model, when the extension was made with all the franchisees, was to basically you run your own stack and your e-commerce. The reason is a lot of them are big groups. Some of them, I think they're even bigger than us. So it's tough to impose on them the POS. And each country has their own payment providers and all this. So I think it was a good call to say, you figure it out. So we would do more advisory. So here's feedback on your campaigns, emails, and the website. Today, I think I'm going to call it an opportunity. So once we're ready with Delphin to do the forecasting, it's not something we decided to build it, part of it because we think it's a differentiator, but also we got the subsidies and the people to do that. But we could make it available to other franchisees, but we would need data. And so this is where probably I wouldn't say, hey, you need to replace the stack, but can we figure out a way?
Can we work together on this?
On capturing the data.
How many people are in your team?
130, 40, yeah.
That's quite a few people.
Yeah, it's a lot. Sometimes it's
And
psychology more than IT.
So on the aspect of leadership, I know that you have a great leader, Aldo Ben-Sadum, who founded the company. You mentioned earlier that he's present in the company still. How do you manage this tech team? How do you make them motivated and willing to work on all this?
So I'm going to start by how I became a CIO. So there was a CIO before me that said, hey, digital should be in IT. So I moved to IT because before that, it was more on the digital cowboys kind of side, which was all my background. And I was always looking at IT, like how can I go around, like shadow IT? That was me.
Maybe I blame the same business. I'm always talking to the tech guys here. So. and so when that individual left Aldo, David said, Matthieu, your boss is leaving. I think you'd do a great CIO. And another example of, okay, why not? I'm going to try it. But I didn't have, all the platform part of it and the real technical, like network and all the cybersecurity. I was really afraid at first. But that's the secret of any career, I think. You always should be afraid, and you always should do it, even when you're afraid.
Say yes.
Yeah, say yes.
Still say yes. When I kind of took over, I said, first, David did it this way. He said, you're never going to be the expert in everything, so make sure you have the right leadership. So that's one thing that obviously made it work. Also had a coach and all this stuff. But then to me, a big, what I like to do the most actually, I think in my role is we call it operational model. So how do you structure the team and the processes and all this? And then when you come from digital, you have like the startup way and agility. It's kind of a given. It's no one else doing BRDs to do a website. But in the more like corporate enterprise, I call it sometimes the back end of the engine of retail.
The spirit is...
It was still like open a ticket and maybe I will do it. So I set out to create squads, basically the same model. So we have squads for store application. So it's the store business, then e-commerce, which is consumer online, and all this on the digital is fine. Now instead of having a team for SAP stuff or whatever, we create squads. One is for supply chain, one is for merch, etc., etc. So what we did is create, the product owner job description. So we're not building product, but we're building capability. So we created really a squad like it would be for an app startup. Even if we don't write as much or create a lot of the app, it's a lot of integration. But what it did is we put in front, so the supply chain exec, my colleague, he's got someone from his team and they align on the backlog and we do the funding and all this. It really changed a lot of things. That's the thing I'm the most proud of, because IT in the past was more kind of IT is a blocker and all this.
You open a ticket because your computer isn't working today.
Exactly. So I think now, at least in certain areas, we're becoming more of an enabler, and we're trying to help our colleagues to achieve the business results. And that's the heritage from the digital side, me launching apps or trying to sell Surf magazine.
And I think there isn't a point of creating a technology if it doesn't have the business purpose of it. So if you have to have the business mindset in order to create a technology, work on technology. Unfortunately, we do see a lot of other tech providers or people that just try things for tech without the business proposition. And I think you have the business mindset that tech will enable.
When you create that pair of two people that spend a lot of time together and explaining both sides of things, you get two things. The IT person starts to explain to the rest of IT what we're trying to do from a business perspective, because my friend there they get a lot of pressure to deliver the results, so get to the business results, so you get that. On the other side, you have the business person being able to explain to her team, why is it taking so long for IT? And then they start to find shortcuts, not hacks, but okay, we don't need all these requirements, let's focus of where can we bring value. And once you have that, you're not sure anymore which one is the IT person. Then you can say, okay, that one we're good, because they got it and it's productive in a business kind of way. And when you see that, this is when makes me very happy. When you see that, it's awesome. obviously it's not everywhere. And some of my colleagues just said, yeah, but Matt, last week. but that's what I'm really aiming for. And it's good for the business. It's also good for people's career, I think, in the team. I do think they're going to, look back at their time at Aldo Tech saying, wow, that was cool. And I did a lot, and I had fun, and yeah.
Yeah, it's important to have fun too, I think.
Yeah.
Our work demands that. And what do you look for when you're hiring a new talent? What are the qualities?
It's a good question because I think it varies a lot. So first is the ability to, especially in IT, tell a story. And I spend a lot of time on this, is even though it's very technical, there's always a way to tell a story. First is who you're talking to, all this stuff. So someone that can articulate an idea in a business way is something I really want. And I'm talking about, maybe at my leadership level. I like people that are curious because I think there's something about change that's accelerating out there. It's tough to think that what you learned when you did your school is still going to be the case once you're in business. So now the McGill students are coming out of schools with all the latest. So we do DataSphere partnerships, and they're equipped like they have the weapons and all the new stuff, cloud first and AI model. It's impressive. The people in the company in the team, if you're not following this, if you're not curious and trying to learn this stuff, you're going to get disrupted for sure. So I look for curiosity and storytelling, for sure. And the business part of it.
Are you seeing the academia side helping you on achieving your goals?
So we do a lot of work with them, if you will. So obviously Fetsi, who's leading data and AI in my team, is also a professor. So it brings even more proximity. But part of what we did when Fetsi joined, so we set out to launch a big program, but we said, what can we do with McGill? And the first thing we did is we did a hackathon, which apparently was the first time, at least for that area of the business. So we just put a bunch of students from McGill into a room for 2 days. And we were pretty broad in terms of just build something using Gen AI for retail. And so I went there judging and it was amazing. So this is one part where I said, okay, they're really technical, but what was more impressive, and those are the winners, there's 5 women, girls, whatever at that age, but they were passionate about shopping and they went to the stores. And
they know it is a good experience.
And they were saying, and their product is basically, when I go and I don't want to buy shoes, I'm buying a style. And if I personalize it to me is, I don't know what's cool. I need to ask someone. And right now, I want to look like probably David Beckham or something. So would be a good reference. Not that I want, but that would be a cool style. Yeah. And so the AI would generate an image of not him, but the style that he has, and with the Aldo shoes that fits the style. So that was something that, one, they have the weapons, the skills, and the data science, but also they had that new, more newer generation, because what do you mean looking for shoes? I have too many choices. I want to look like, or I'm going to a wedding or something.
Yeah.
So we're building that now, and hopefully it's going to get on the website at some point.
Do you think this new ChatGPT for all brought another level of... I haven't seen an application in retail yet because it just arrived, but I think that might bring another level of response.
Yeah, there's a lot everywhere. I think so when I was talking about Delphin, the data cruncher, what ChatGPT or LLMs allow you to do is to give her the human interaction versus dashboards and Excel spreadsheets. So yes, you can have the brain, but also the mouth and the ears to communicate differently. And I think that's the game changer. We use it and I think a lot of retailers use it for product description, kind of automated. I always say job description, I would, ask HR and no, not like that, not like that. Now I I write it with my left hand during a boring meeting, and it looks super good. So there's a lot of these efficiencies. So I have 3 buckets of how to use AI in retail, and I was just speaking about it recently. And the first one is there's no reason today not to have AI for everyone. So every day for everyone, you just need to communicate, explain. And so I have one when you like a lease for a store, it's like 200 pages of stuff. And now you can chat with the AI to say, give me the 10 things. Yeah. Exactly. So there's plenty of use cases like this. So that would be one. The middle one is where you need a bit more work. So a bit of help from your IT friend. So customer service, marketing. So that would be a low code or lower kind of code kind of thing. And this is something that's not a big project, and you need to pick the one that's going to deliver the business value, because it's easy to get excited and want to build stuff, but you just focus on the one that will bring value. And the third one would be the big bets, or the big leaps, I call them. So this is what we're doing with Delphin, is we consciously decide to invest because we think we're going to be in advance. We don't think that someone's going to crack the code. The big companies are not going to crack the code to the level of precision that we will be able to do for fashion retail. So that's how I look at it. So there's no reason why Gen AI would not be useful for any employees at this point.
I think it's already being useful for many people. It's part of my life. AI that's going to transcribe this interview, is the AI that will help me edit it. AI is not here doing the interview, but it's allowing me with the superpowers to make it good.
Exactly the point. And I think that's a good way to look at it. You see it as your AI friend. It's actually Mr. B that came up with that quote with it was a podcast, I think, with Arlie Finkenstein, the Shopify president. And he said, just think about AI as a good friend. That, sometimes, that's me adding to it, but sometimes, it does some weird things. My friends too.
Yeah, exactly. My AI friends are a bit stupid. I think my friends are smarter than, but like the AI is here to serve me, not my friends.
And then we talked about responsibility a bit. Okay, so your AI friend, but if you own a dog and it bites someone, you're responsible for it. So make sure you're responsible for.
Now we're getting to the end of the interview. I don't like to ask you. No, I know you have a daughter, but
you can ask me anything.
Why don't you tell your daughter on how to get ready for the future?
I think the same way I was talking about new recruits. So I think you have to be curious and embrace new things. Is one thing.
Why don't you send her to Costa Rica?
So
go surf a little bit.
And actually, I talk a lot about this. So I have a good job, so I have the means to do all kinds of things. But it's actually probably college. Like, I'm gonna ask her if she'd like to go to Europe somewhere to do. So when you're alone and you have to face adversity, I think. I see it for my daughter, but I see it for a lot of these friends where a lot of things are putting them into cotton candy things. So the parents arguing with the teachers, and there's not really response.
They're like, no, I don't want my kids to go through what I went.
Exactly,
that's what made
and all the padding and like all this stuff. I think at some point, because you're gonna face adversity at some point.
When I was 24, I was like, you know what? I'm going to move abroad. And I went to New York without speaking the language. And I think that made me become who I am. Yeah. Until then, I think my life is separate into, before moving out of the country without speaking the language, and after.
And I totally agree. And I think that's probably something that makes a lot of difference. So you see a lot of people coming from outside of Canada. I use the image when and some people have been through tough situation, and when there's we call it a Sev1, so that's basically the website is down, and what you have is two groups, and you see it in a minute. You have the group of people that have been through hell, and they raise up and say, okay, what do we need to do? We're gonna fix it, that's gonna be okay. And the other group of, it's not in my job description, and because they don't know, that they're afraid that something bad's gonna happen. But
do you have a diversity agenda, I would say, to your team? Do you try to?
I spend time wanting to have more women in the team, but that's like my daughter, we were talking about it with other friends, and we said, we need to change the perception for girls when they're younger that IT is the old image of a nerd, because I think that's what's preventing girls to go in the tech school. We need to do something that tells them about IT is not just hard code, and
it's actually being able to change the world, because that's what technology has brought us, where technology has brought us, right? So
well, it sounds
it's having the tools to change actively. Like,
you're right.
Yeah.
But the perception of the 13, 14, 15 years old girls, I don't think they see it this way yet.
Let's change that.
Other than that, from a cultural environment, we have a very diverse, and it's awesome. When we have lunch, it's all like, it's very interesting. I love it. So same as when I was in Costa Rica, you had tables of, part of it would speak Spanish, English, French, Italian. You try to communicate with signs to get me the salt, but
this is actually what excites me when I see a monoculture. I go like, this is it. Everybody thinks the same. Everybody talks the same. Nobody. When I go to New York or London and I see so many people from so many places and everybody getting along, that's what I live for. All right. Matt, thank you so much for coming to OFFBounds. You are now officially an OFFBounder. Thanks for sharing your views, and I'm very excited for the future of Aldo as a customer and as someone that follows the industry. Congratulations to your work.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to do it. It was my first real podcast, and so
welcome to the podcast world. I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of more invites from now on.